It always feels weird like starting these things off.
Yeah, just 'cause you're ready with it.
Yeah. Hey, my name is Walter Ostlie. I am the creator of Haxor, and I'm making this video to answer some of the questions I asked for. I didn't realize there was going to be so many questions, so I figured this would be faster and quicker for everyone involved. So, with the help of my lovely wife, she's going to ask me the questions so it doesn't feel so weird. All right, shoot.
Is this the end of Haxor?
This is the end of Haxor as far as we know. I was able to tell the story that I wanted to tell. And so, yeah, for all intents and purposes, as far as anyone knows, including myself, Haxor is complete. It's done. I do have ideas for 2 more storylines that I think would add to the entire story, but this is the main story, the main thought, emotion that I wanted to get across. And so, yeah, this is the end of Haxor as far as we know.
What's next? Will you make another comic?
Yes, I will be making comics until the day I die. I've made 2 comics previously, a comic called Shiver Bureau and another comic called Cubicles. Shiver Bureau is kind of like Sherlock Holmes and Watson if they're Ghostbusters, and Cubicles is about 2 slackers on a crazy space adventure. So those are already out. You can actually read Shiver Bureau online at shiverbureau.com. I want to retrofit those and get them on Webtoons, but I don't know if anyone's tried it, but trying to take a traditional comic page and get it to fit on Webtoon is a lot of work. It's not a crazy amount of work, but it's a good amount of work, which is why I did Haxor specifically for the Webtoon format. So besides those 2, I'm working on a new project called Metal Shark Bro, which I'm working on right now. And it'll probably be done sometime early next year. And you can follow Metal Shark Bro on Facebook at Facebook Metal Shark Bro. So that's the plan. I do want to do another Webtoon comic. I, of course, would have to pitch them a new idea and see if it was something that they dig. But I love Webtoons. I love the people on Webtoons. I love the people that work at Webtoons. I love Webtoons as a format. I love all the comics on Webtoons. So yes, I would love to do another Webtoon comic as well.
Can you tell us about the world building and the characters?
So this question came up a lot about just the whole smorgasbord of world building. And I tend to play it pretty fast and loose when it comes to world building. I am not a details kind of guy. I want the world to support the story, and I don't want a world to control the story. So I tend to keep it as minimal as possible for that reason in particular. Plus, I'm impatient, so I like to tell the story as quick as possible, and I don't want to sit there forever coming up with all these rules. We have enough rules in our world right now, and I'm not going to add more onto the stories I create because it's not about the rules for me. It's about the characters and what they're going through, and then the story after that. So that's going on with that. And then there's a lot of questions too about why are the characters who they are? What's the world they live in like? Are there lingo and dialect that they talk in? And there's a lot of stuff too around ISO on why I chose for her to be a black heroine, or why she wasn't heterosexual. And then there's a bunch of stuff at the beginning, when it first launched, about people not realizing that she was female. And I did all that stuff because I wanted the story to be as diverse as possible. And I never really call out specifically what race, what gender, what sexual preference the characters have, because I didn't want that to be the focus, but at the same time, I kind of wanted to let the audience see what they wanted to see in the characters. And so I kind of left it vague, but I dropped like little hints and stuff of what people wanted to take in for themselves and see what they wanted to see in those characters. And so if you'll notice, like pretty much like all of the main characters come from some kind of different background than what you'll see in like traditional US media stuff. And that was basically just to give everyone a voice, I guess. And that's where that came from.
Were there particular lingos or dialects that the characters were speaking?
Yeah, this one kind of ties in to the last question as far as the world building and like who the characters were. I didn't have a particular dialect or lingo or anything. And someone asked, I think, in some of the earlier episodes on why there wasn't like kind of more like futuristic slang going on. To me, that stuff sometimes feels a little fake, trying to make up pop culture phrases, because that stuff kind of builds up and grows over time naturally. And so for me to like force it into a world that no one's familiar with, like it's just it sounds goofy to me. And sometimes you can pull it off, and sometimes like I feel like it doesn't. It just feels silly. And so I didn't do that stuff. And then as far as like dialect goes, like I said, it kind of ties back to what I said before. Like I wanted people to interpret the characters in their own voice so that they would feel like they had more connection to the characters and more voice. So I didn't want it to be like, this is who it is, this is what it is. Like I wanted you to be able to participate in the stories and see the characters the way you wanted to see them.
Who's shipping who?
So first of all, I only learned about the shipping term when I first learned about Webtoons. And so like there was a bunch of stuff going around, like Verb and ISO were gonna ship, and then just on this last episode, there were people saying that Detective Ingalls and ISO were gonna ship, which obviously wasn't the case. So someone asked about like what the age difference was between ISO and Ingalls, and it's a pretty large gap. Ingalls is probably in his like 40s, late 40s, something like that, and ISO is still in her teens, which they could still ship, but it's more of kind of a father-daughter role at that point. Wire was really ISO's like father figure, but with Wire being gone, Ingalls was kind of there, so maybe like an uncle or something like that. I don't know, but definitely not. I never had any intentions of them being a couple. And then there was some questions too about Switch and Dreddy Bear and whether they were a couple or brothers. And I tried to allude to it as much as possible, but in my mind, they were a couple. And that's what Switch was worried about people finding out. And that was what Deep was holding over him to get him to help. In which at the end, he began to feel comfortable with admitting it. And that's what the scene was with him holding Dreddy Bear at the end. In the previous chapter. And then other than that, I didn't really have any other shipping going on. The deep end and ISO was the main relationship of the story.
What's the deal with Gear and Sector?
Okay. So this one came up a lot with people being confused on what actually happened. And as soon as I realized that people were having a hard time with it, I tried as much as I could in the last few episodes to try to clear it up. And I don't know how good of a job I did. Obviously, there's some of you are still confused. So I didn't do a perfect job of it, but I'll just come out and like just say exactly what's going on. So basically, like I said in the story, like no one can alter their avatar because it's connected to their to the way their brain is and like how they see themselves, and so you can't really see yourself differently. What was going on with Gear and Sector is they are the same person. Gear is Sector, Sector is Gear. Sector didn't steal Gear's body, get loaded into his brain or anything. Gear was born Gear, but through an effort on his own, he was able to become Sector in the frame. Why was he able to do that if no one's able to do that? Well, for one, you can think of Gear Sector. I don't know if there's like Gector, Sector. No. Anyways, so Gear Sector. You can think of him if you've ever seen a movie called The Matrix. You can think of Gear Sector as like Neo from The Matrix. Like he is on a completely different level in The Matrix. Like he can do a thing that no one else in The Matrix can do because he's Neo. And so that's what Gear Sector is. And also, they're a little insane. And so that kind of helps with that. And so that's why he was able to do what he did. Like Gear Sector was a Neo of the frame. Like even without being crazy, Gear Sector would have been able to do like pretty much whatever they wanted to in the frame.
What's Sector's problem?
Sector's problem is that they are completely insane. There's no sense of right and wrong. There's only kind of like a super selfish ego for Gear Sector. And that's where that comes from. Like people are wondering like what Sector's endgame was, like what Sector's problem was with ISO. And the main problem that Sector had with ISO is that ISO thought she was the best, and Gear Sector couldn't handle that. And I think I say at the beginning of the story, right when Sector shows up, is that Sector's been like off the scene for a long time. And now since ISO's been moving up and impressing everyone and kind of being considered the best, that's when Gear comes back, or Gear Sector comes back to show ISO what's up. And then, so basically our entire plan is to prove to ISO that that ISO is pretty much like a pathetic ant when compared to Sector, and she really wants ISO to realize that. And why did Sector not work with Tensor? I mean, Sector is just selfish, like self-absorbed, singular. And so she wouldn't work with anyone, especially like a crappy company, because she's still a hacker. Like she's not going to work with some corporate entity anyways, let alone anyone. And so that's why she didn't work with them. Like she could do all this stuff on her own. She doesn't need a company that's still trying to figure it out, basically, and so much so that they accidentally kill people when they're testing it. And that's just sloppy from Sector's viewpoint.
Are Deep, Wire, and Sector truly dead?
So Wire is truly dead. Deep is also truly dead. They're both gone. They're not coming back. And Sector didn't actually die. ISO basically used that neural scanner algorithm for all intents and purposes, to fry Sector's brain, because Sector thought she was so awesome. And that's what ISO's getting at when she basically gives Sector like a lobotomy, I guess you could say, like scrambles her brain so much that she's basically almost in a comatose state at that point. And that's where we leave her, where we leave Sector, Gear, at the end of the story. So Gear is Sector in the physical world, Sector is Gear in the frame. And so both of their minds are basically gone, with, as far as we know, nothing left and no way to do anything anymore.
Why did Deep have to die?
So this one came up, and I know it kind of upset a lot of people for a bunch of different reasons. And Deep had to die for the same reasons that Wire had to die. Wire was a connection to that place for Iso, to that city, to her old life. And it was also motivation for her to step outside of her comfort zone, and kind of get out of her room and get into the real world, and to trust her team in a kind of life or death real situation. Because like, even when she was on the frame, she didn't really trust her team. She wanted to be the MVP of the thing, do it all of herself. And so that's why Wire died. And the Deep dying was also for the same reasons. Deep was a connection to the world that she was living in, into that city. And not really to say that Deep would have held her back, but so Deep had like two purposes. One, she was there so that Iso could realize that she could trust somebody, that she could let somebody in, and that she could actually love somebody in that kind of way. And then when Deep died, Iso had to realize that she could still do all this stuff on her own, that she was actually strong enough and not just a show off. And also, now that you've read the last chapter, that Iso is leaving the city and going out and getting off the frame, and Deep would have been a connection that would have held her to that life. And so this was her way of, or my way of, giving Iso a completely fresh start and a way to move on her own and find the world on her own, like fresh and alone, and with all the possible situations or possibilities in front of her.
Can you give us some more world building stuff for Haxor?
I can. Some people are asking for like character cards and character bios and like some 3D models of the stuff, for whatever reason, for cosplay, which would be freaking awesome. If I went to a convention and saw someone cosplaying that, I'd probably fall on my face. But yeah, I will try to do that stuff. It's not something that I usually do, but because you guys are awesome and you've been reading for 37 episodes, which is insane to my brain, I did like a math thing where I figured that like 37 episodes was probably like 240 traditional comic book pages, which is like almost 100 more than my longest project so far. But yeah, I'll try to do that. I will post it on the Haxor Instagram, so you can follow there, and I'll post it when I make it, I guess. And I'll put a link to everything, like Shiver and all this stuff, in the comments for the YouTube, or not in the comments, but in the description for the YouTube video. And yeah, so I'll put it there if I get a chance to do it, so you can follow it there. Yeah. Cool. All right. So I think that answers all the questions. If I did not explain something well enough to you, or if I missed a question, which is possible, feel free to comment on the YouTube video and I will answer you there. I'm really good about answering my stuff on social media. Otherwise, you can follow me on Twitch if you want to ask stuff in real time about anything. I'd be more than happy to answer you while I'm streaming. Yeah, I think that's it. So thank you guys so much for reading Haxor over these. I have no idea how many months, almost a year, I guess. It was crazy trying to keep up with that weekly schedule, but with the help of everyone, we were able to pull it off. And I hope you guys enjoyed the story. And yeah, I'm looking forward to the next comic, and I hope you guys are there to read it when I do. Thanks. Peace.